You're looking at the new dad, he shouts, and then the county seal flashes gold. I place the envelope in her hands. The street forgets to breathe. A paper crown wilts. The real throne is notarized. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Richard. I'm 62 years old. She called it a symbolic gesture. She loved phrases like that, always did. She said she picked them up from her mother, my ex, who devoured legal thrillers and liked to play lawyer on holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas didn't matter. She'd stand at the table quoting case law no one else had read, spinning arguments out of cranberry sauce and wine. Our daughter must have absorbed it by osmosis. The gesture this time was a printed e-ticket to the fall father-daughter banquet at her graduate school in Berkeley. One ticket, two names, not mine. She'd told me about it 3 weeks earlier. Brunch, though calling it brunch was generous, it was one of those forced meals, the kind arranged out of guilt or obligation. We sat in a diner just off Highway 12. Vinyl booths, cracked in the corners, coffee that tasted like scorched earth. Her eyes never left her phone for more than 3 seconds at a time. When she did look up, her gaze was flat, rehearsed. I want to invite someone else this year, she'd said, cutting into a waffle so dry the knife squeaked. It's symbolic of the new chapter I'm building. I remember the sound of my fork scraping against porcelain. I remember my orange juice catching in my throat when I swallowed too fast. You mean Rick? I asked. Her thumb hovered over her phone screen. She looked up then, eyebrows steady, like she'd been waiting for me to name him out loud. He's been there for me. Through everything, I nodded. Quiet. Too quiet, maybe. Because she felt the need to keep filling the air. You and Mom split. You moved out. You started over. I had to, too. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Words as neat as index cards pulled from a stack. That's what stung. Not the words themselves, I'd heard sharper, worse, but the ease of them. Like she'd practiced in front of a mirror. Like this wasn't the first time she'd rehearsed rewriting our history. I stirred my coffee and let her keep talking, but something in me knew better than to argue. That was the day I decided my role wasn't to push back anymore. It was to observe, to listen, to watch. Back on the street 3 weeks later, she stood in a blue sundress that caught the light just enough to look deliberate. Her hair pinned back, but a few strands loose, framing her face. She handed the ticket to him like it was a coronation. My replacement grinned wide, gums, teeth, all 32 showing, and while grinning, he looked straight at me, held my eyes. Rick. Hey, Rich. Didn't think we'd see you here. The words rang out casual, but sharp at the edges. I didn't answer. Just shifted my weight, stepped aside as they passed. The edge of my shoes scraped concrete, louder than it should have. It echoed in my ears like chalk across a board. A mother walking by with a stroller glanced at me, head tilted with quiet curiosity. I shoved my hands deeper into my pockets, pressing the envelope flat against my thigh. The envelope I'd been carrying for weeks, the one she didn't know existed. The passersby didn't know who I was, not yet. But she did, and when her eyes caught mine, just for a flicker, I saw it. A ripple. Doubt. Not guilt, not regret. Doubt. As if the ground beneath her wasn't quite as solid as she'd hoped. I crossed to the far side of the street, behind the safety of a mailbox's shadow. Watched them pose by a brick wall, painted with Fall Welcome 2025. A banner flapped overhead, loose string buzzing against metal. The breeze lifted her hair, tossed it sideways, and in that brief motion I saw her at 8 years old again. Running toward the car after school, backpack slipping off one shoulder, hair wild, her little clay art project crumbling in her hand as she shouted for me to look. She used to call me her anchor. Now she was smiling at a man who once told her, dropping out might be smarter than going into debt. Student loans are a scam, he'd said years back, beer in his hand, belly laugh shaking the room. And she'd believe me when I told her not to listen. The irony almost pulled a laugh from my throat. Almost. She handed him the ticket again, a second presentation. This time he twirled it in his fingers like a magician with a coin, winking at the invisible crowd. "You're looking at the new dad," he declared, chest puffed. No one asked. No one needed to. I heard it anyway. Here's what she didn't know. 3 days after our brunch, I'd boarded a train to Oakland, sat stiff in a window seat while the bay rolled past in slanted light. Walked into the Alameda County Clerk's office, floors buzzing under fluorescent hum. It took 15 minutes to find the right line, 45 more to file the right form. My name was still on her FAFSA. I'd co-signed her lease, stood as guarantor when she signed that dotted line. Years earlier, I'd opened a 529 savings account in her name, under mine, when she was 7. That fund carried most of her tuition for 2 years straight. And when her mother and I divorced, the ink on the custody agreement had spelled it clear. I held the final say in financial sponsorships through her 25th birthday. She was 23. She hadn't read the fine print, but I had. 2 weeks before the banquet, I had the clause recertified, stamped, notarized, copied. The envelope in my pocket wasn't sentimental. It was surgical. I didn't plan to wield it like a hammer. No, I'd place it, at the right moment, the precise one. Back on the sidewalk, Rick lifted his phone, extending his arm for another picture. She leaned in, hair brushing his shoulder, laughing too loudly, but I caught it. The crack in her voice, the way the pitch wavered at the edge. No one else noticed. I did. I breathed slow. The bus that had rumbled earlier returned, brakes shrieking as it stopped at the curb, spilling out a stream of teenagers. One of them dropped a soda can that spun and rolled, metal scraping along gutter stone until it stopped. Her eyes followed it, a break in her smile. Just a second. Then they darted back to me. She knew. She knew I hadn't left. Funny thing about public performances, when you stage them on a sidewalk, you don't get to pick your audience. A man stepped out of the dry cleaners, arms full of plastic-wrapped shirts, pausing mid-stride to watch. Across the street, someone turned down their Bluetooth speaker. The bass line of Stevie Wonder died into silence. That silence spread, thickened. A group of students drifted past, her classmates maybe. They waved politely. One girl looked at Rick with confusion sharp enough to pierce. "Is that your dad?" she asked. My daughter's smile froze. "Yeah," she said quickly. "Well, sort of. The words clung to the air like damp clothes. The girl frowned, tilted her head. "I thought your dad was the guy who worked at the VA clinic in Sonoma." My chest tightened. Air stopped mid-breath. Rick's jaw twitched. My daughter blinked too many times in a row. "Oh," she stammered. He used to. He's kind of stepping back now." That was my cue. I stepped off the curb, slowly. Heel to toe, every footfall louder than it had any right to be. Crossing into their space, but not intruding. Closing the distance until I stood 5 feet away. Close enough for them to feel the weight of me. Far enough to stay within the rules of civility. "Rick. Richard, buddy. Look, this isn't personal." Me. "I know it's not. That's the problem." I kept my voice low, level, no blink, just reached into my pocket and held the envelope out. Me. "Here's what is personal." She didn't touch it, not at first, just stared at the county seal stamped on the front, golden notary circle catching light. I held it steady. Me. "Open it." Rick reached. I shifted it away. Me. "Not for you." Her fingers shook as she took it. She slid the paper out slowly, unfolding it with a surgeon's care. Her eyes skimmed once, then again, slower. "Rick, what is it?" No answer. She folded it back up with the same care she'd unfolded it, looked at me, then at the half circle of strangers watching, then at the ticket still trapped in Rick's hand. The wind picked up, tugging the banner above them sideways. The words, "Fall welcome," stretched, snapped, flapped past like some cruel punchline. Rick laughed again, but softer this time. Uneasy. Confused. She didn't. She didn't say a word. The breeze carried the scent of kettle corn from a nearby vendor. Sweet, burnt sugar curled into the afternoon heat, drifting past exhaust fumes and the dull tang of warm concrete. A strange perfume, equal parts fairground and freeway. You could almost believe it was just another Saturday, that nothing unusual was happening, that everyone milling around was only here for errands and snacks. You could almost smell the effort people made to pretend. Pretend this was ordinary. Pretend this wasn't spectacle. But her silence made it something else. She still held the envelope like it might sting her if she folded it wrong. Thumb grazing the seal, fingers trembling, though she tried to keep them steady. The crease of her brow said she didn't trust it. Didn't trust me? Didn't trust herself? Rick leaned forward, craning his neck, squinting at the page she hadn't finished closing. Rick, what is that? Some kind of letter? His voice rang out too loud, too casual, the kind of tone you use when you think you've still got control. Me. Not a letter. A binding correction. The words landed heavy. He blinked at me, puzzled, like I'd just spoken in a dialect he didn't understand. His eyebrows drew in, furrowed together as if that could form an answer. Rick, what are you talking about? My daughter looked down again, eyes pulled like magnets back to the type. Her lips moved faintly. She was whispering the words to herself. Not all of them, just the highlighted ones. Her voice caught on page 2. It was the sentence that mattered most. All active financial sponsorship and legal co-signature rights shall remain the sole responsibility of the biological parent, listed herein until the beneficiary reaches the age of 25, unless otherwise amended and notarized by said parent. The ink sat there, black and absolute, signed, stamped, registered in Sonoma County records just 2 weeks ago. Reference number clear in the corner, neat as any case file. I said it plain, me. You're not the name on the paper, Rick. That smirk of his, the one he wore like armor, the one he polished for moments like these, it slipped, just a hair. The corners of his mouth twitched downward before he caught them. Rick. Okay, look, this is dramatic. It's just a school banquet. Me. It's not about the banquet. This time I didn't even look at him. I turned my shoulders, faced her instead. Me. It's about you handing a symbol to a stranger and calling it closure. Her breath hitched, the faintest flinch, but it was there. Behind us, a group of students wandered past again, slower now, lingering in orbit, whispering behind cupped hands. I couldn't make out the words, but I saw their eyes flick toward Rick. Whatever they said was sharp enough to make his jaw tighten. She finally spoke. Daughter, you came here to embarrass me? Me. I came here because you invited someone else to take credit for what I built. She swallowed hard, looked down at the envelope again, thumb running the edge of the page as if the paper itself might argue for her. Daughter, it's not about credit. Me. Isn't it? That hung between us. Then the kettle corn vendor broke the silence, shouting, Fresh batch! $3. His voice cracked like a starter pistol, but nobody moved, nobody turned. The whole street was frozen, listening to something quieter than sales. Back in June, my phone buzzed with a call from her landlord. She'd missed rent, twice. His tone was clipped, annoyed like I was supposed to be the one chasing her down. I wired the money before he could finish the complaint. No questions asked. In July, a text came through. Just 2 words. Book costs. Another $300 gone. No emoji. No thank you. No explanation. I didn't need one. I wasn't keeping score, but someone else was. Rick had been circling since her sophomore year. Friend of a friend. Always there. Always hanging around the edges like a barnacle you can't scrape off. Her mother's new definition of stable. He wasn't stable. He was permanent presence disguised as permanence. He said things that sounded like wisdom, but were just smoke. Family is fluid. History doesn't make legacy. Lines rehearsed enough to sound profound, easy enough to repeat at dinner tables. That's what she'd been echoing when she handed him the ticket. Her lips had moved around his phrases. Legacy doesn't mean what it used to. Except it does. In courtrooms. In banks. In paperwork with seals pressed into the corner. That was what she forgot. Rick stepped closer now, body angled in front of her, his stance all show, trying to shield her like I was the threat. Rick, you think you're making a point, Rich, but you just look sad. I let the word sit, didn't flinch. Me, maybe. My hand dipped into my jacket again. I pulled out the second sheet, crisp folded sharp. Me, but I'm also legally listed as the exclusive educational sponsor until 2027, which means this. I gestured to the ticket clutched in his palm. Me, isn't just a gesture. It's a misrepresentation. The word cut. Misrepresentation. A word you can't shrug off. Someone near the bus stop gasped. Not dramatic, not loud, just enough that Rick's ears caught it. His shoulders stiffened. My daughter's eyes darted to mine. Daughter, you wouldn't... Me. Sue? Number? That's not who I am. I handed the second page directly to her. Slow, calm. It was a registrar's printout. Her university seal, stamped in blue at the top. It listed tuition sources. One name. Mine. One address. Mine. My signature below. Filed under. Financial contributor of record. She didn't argue. Couldn't. Her eyes moved down the page, lips pressed tight. Rick tried to sneer. Rick, you really brought receipts to a banquet? Me. No. I brought reminders. The bus nearby hissed, brakes releasing. It pulled away, leaving the sidewalk quieter than before. A cyclist zipped past, head turning briefly, curiosity flickering across his face. The afternoon light cut sharp across Rick's cheek, and in that sun he looked older than I'd ever noticed. Smaller. Shrunken. Her shoulders sagged, not dramatically, not like in movies, just a small, soft collapse inward, like her spine forgot how to carry the weight of her own choices. The silence was long, the kind that grows roots. Then she folded the papers, not sloppy, not rushed, careful, each crease deliberate, as though folding them properly might make the contents less real. She slid them into her bag, right next to her phone, her lipstick, her keys, tools of the mask she was ready to wear tonight. Finally, she turned to Rick. Daughter, let's go. His head jerked. Rick, wait, what? Daughter, I said let's go. I'm not doing this here. His eyes darted between her and me, trying to gauge which way the ground was tilting. Rick, he ambushed us and you're siding with him? She turned back to me, eyes sharp. Daughter, you could have just called. Me, you would have ignored it. Her lips parted, ready to counter, but no words came. She didn't deny it. Rick's hand twitched toward her arm. Rick, you can't be serious. After everything I've done. I cut in. Me. What have you done, Rick? His eyes snapped toward me. Me. Name one thing. One actual thing that didn't involve telling her who to blame. His lips moved. Opened. Nothing. Just air. That was the first twist. The first break in his performance. She stood there, caught in a split. One man carrying her past in his pocket. Another peddling futures he didn't own. And the crowd? Oh, the crowd had grown. Not a mob, but a collection. The woman with the stroller had stopped under the banner, rocking it gently as though her child might absorb this as lullaby. A man holding a Walgreens bag stared at his receipt like it held the secrets of the scene. Two teens perched on a planter, elbows on knees, their eyes snapping between the three of us, waiting for a punchline, for someone to fall. Rick felt it. His shoulders squared, his spine stiffened. He hated being watched without applause. Rick, you think this little scene makes you look noble? It doesn't. You're just a bitter old man with papers. I let a breath pass before answering. Me. And you're a grown child with a ticket he didn't earn. The line left my lips colder than I'd intended, sharper. It sliced through the air. Even the kettle corn guy stopped mid-shout. His scoop hovered in the air. Sugar smoke curled into silence. Then came her voice, quieter, controlled. "Daughter, can you just give us a minute?" I nodded, stepped back. My shoes scraped against the sidewalk as I crossed toward the tree line, where the pavement gave way to the first shade of the park. I didn't need to hear what followed, but I heard it anyway. Her, "You said he was out of the picture?" Him, "He was, until he decided to play sheriff." Her, "You said he'd signed everything away in the divorce." Him, "How was I supposed to know he refiled anything?" "You think he told me?" Her voice cracked then, sharp as a blade. Her, "You should have known." Those words landed like a stone dropped in still water. I felt the ripple even from 20 feet away. They walked then, not together, not hand in hand, just in the same direction, parallel. The kind of walk that said more than words could. I let them pass. Rick kept his eyes fixed on the ground, wouldn't look at me. She did. Once. Her lips parted as if she might say something, but the breeze came then, sweeping hair across her face. A curtain. Words hidden. I didn't wait. I turned, stepped into the shade, sat down on the nearest park bench, iron cold under me, a bronze plaque screwed into the backrest, in memory of those who stayed. I leaned back against it, closed my eyes for a moment. Behind me, the banner still flapped. "Fall welcome!" Again and again, each gust repeating the joke. I opened my eyes just in time to see Rick crush the ticket in his hand. The same ticket he'd waved like a crown minutes ago. He jammed it into his jacket pocket, fingers clenched, knuckles white. Then he pulled it free, tossed it into the nearest bin. Paper, crumpled, silent. The paper hit the side of the trash can and missed. It clanged off the rim with a hollow, embarrassed note, and skittered back, the corner catching grit. It spun once on the sidewalk, a pale coin in slow motion, then settled face up by the base of a lamppost, where old stickers peeled and a ring of gum marked the concrete like a failed halo. The ticket, her ticket, still perfectly visible. University of California, Berkeley, Fall, Father-Daughter Banquet. One guest only. I watched Rick keep walking, never breaking stride. The swing of his arms didn't slow. The set of his shoulders said he preferred forward motion to accountability. He didn't turn back to pick it up. He didn't even glance. She did. 3 steps later, she paused. The hem of her dress eased against her knee. She looked at it, then at me, then back to the ticket. Her face went still in that way she has when a thought hits and refuses to leave. She didn't touch it. The crowd that had gathered began to thin as if they sensed Act 1 had ended and no encore was coming. The whispering died off like a radio turned down. Even the stroller baby had quieted, a pacifier working with steady resolve. I waited. No words, no signal. Just heat rising from the concrete. That kind of early evening warmth Northern California, hordes in September, refusing to let go even as shadows stretch. The kettle corn smell had drifted away, traded for dry leaves, old bark, and the faint tar-sweet trace of asphalt softening in the last light. I stood, finally, not abruptly. Knee first, then weight, then spine. I walked slowly toward the bench where she stood staring at the trash, as though the bin itself had insulted her. She didn't look at me. "Daughter, you brought that contract to prove a point." Her voice looked for anger, but found fatigue instead. Me. "No." Pause. I let the air settle. Let the traffic hum become a metronome. Me. "I brought it to keep you safe." Her head turned slightly, a quarter-inch movement, like a weather vane deciding which way the wind is truly blowing. "Daughter, from what?" Me. "From someone who saw you as a trophy for replacing me." She flinched, subtle, but real. The flinch wasn't about guilt. It was about recognition. A mirror held up to a part she didn't audition for. 2 years ago, he tried to help. That was the word he loved. Help. He tried to help her invest the money in her 529 account. He texted her a link and said, "Cryptocurrency education." It's the future, he said it like a slogan on a hat. I caught it in time because the custodian notified me. I froze the funds with a call and an emailed form. She never even knew the almost of it. Last year, he told her to stop seeing her therapist because grief is a scam if it lasts longer than 6 months. He said it at a barbecue, holding a red plastic cup like a gavel. I watched her swallow the words, saw them stick in her throat. I paid for 3 more sessions anonymously, using a prepaid card and a P.O. box return. I learned the trick from a social worker at the VA who taught me how to be invisible when help needs to arrive quietly. She never traced those sessions back to me, thought they were part of the student wellness program. Maybe it's better that way. Pride can be fragile when it's bleeding. He was carving away at her slowly, not with a knife, with suggestion, with the soft edge of a phrase repeated over months. He made her doubt the years that had shaped her. He made her ashamed of the hands that built her, as if fingerprints were stains. She didn't know it, but she'd almost been handed over like an estate with no will, a legacy left on a curb, free to whoever felt bold enough to claim it. But I had one. Not just a will, but a notarized financial and legal declaration, amended 6 months earlier, when a headache during a routine checkup sent me spiraling through what-ifs. I came home with a new prescription and a resolve sharpened by fluorescent lights and waiting room magazines. That's what I'd brought with me in the briefcase at my side. Black leather, scuffed corner, handle warm by my palm. It isn't armor. It's a map. She finally looked at me, her face shifting between shame and something else. Something like exhaustion, the kind you feel behind the eyes, the kind you carry in your jaw. Daughter, you could have called. You could have explained it. Me, you weren't ready to hear it. I kept my voice even. No accusation, just an open door. She didn't deny it. She closed her mouth on the words she might have said, then let them go. I opened the briefcase, not dramatically. No theatrics. Just a click of metal on metal. The latch's clean bite. Paper rustled inside with that soft thunder of stacked pages. I pulled the stack loose, 3 pages thick, firm and clean, sealed with the notary stamp from the Sonoma County Courthouse. Dated and recorded under Claim Ref 402B-16C. The stamp is a small sunburst of authority. It doesn't care about feelings. It recognizes signatures. It was more than legal authority. It was lineage, transferred correctly. A bridge built on letters and deadlines and the patience to read until the end. I didn't wave it, didn't flash it. Theatrical paper never convinced a heart, just held it out. Me. You're still listed under my estate, my healthcare proxy, my power of attorney. If something happened to you tomorrow, they'd call me. Her eyes widened, irises bright as polished stones, a reflexive intake of breath, like the body knew the truth before the mind let it in. Daughter, Rick said Mom updated everything last year. Me. She updated her records, not mine. Not the ones that fund your school, your apartment, your co-signed car insurance. A small pause, the part where realization tries the door handle and finds it unlocked. She blinked. Once. Twice. Daughter. Then what have I been doing? Me. Trying to be loyal to people who only wanted to win. I placed the papers down on the bus bench between us. The bench paint had been retouched recently. A green sheen clung to the metal and made the documents look too white, like they'd never seen weather. She stared at them, like they were foreign, or radioactive, as though touching them would brand her with a word she didn't want to wear. Me. You handed him a ticket. I handed you a contract. One burns, one binds. I didn't say which one she'd chosen first. She knew. Behind us, a child shouted from across the park, the wild happiness of a game only children understand. A dog barked twice, authoritative barks that meant nothing except, I'm here. I'm here. The world restarted its machine, gears meshing, scenes resuming. I didn't. Me. He thought the ticket granted him entry. But the real pass, notarized and binding Ta, was already in my pocket. Her hands twitched at her sides like birds considering flight. Me, you were never just a symbol. You were a story I've been writing since the day you were born. That day smelled like antiseptic and oranges. The nurse wore a pin shaped like a daisy. I learned the power of names and the terror of tiny lungs, struggling, then deciding to scream. I learned that love can be immediate and relentless, and not ask for permission. She finally sat down. The bench took her weight with a small groan. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She stared at the street as if it had answers hidden in the cracks. She just whispered, "Daughter, so what do I do now?" Me, you read the fine print. Then you decide whose name you want to carry forward. I kept my eyes on the documents. I didn't want my face to tilt the scale. Love can be heavy. It should not be a thumb. She turned to the papers, touched the seal with a cautious finger, as if testing the heat of a pan, then turned to the last page, the one that matters when the arguments are over. 3 lines, printed clearly, no poetry, no wiggle. Legal beneficiary, Lillian Ann Beckett. Primary sponsor, Richard Allen Beckett. Date of record, August 12th, 2025. She read each line twice. I watched her lips shape her own name and then mine, and somewhere between them I heard the bridge reassemble plank by plank. She folded the documents carefully and placed them in her bag, not stuffed, not hidden, set down with intent, like a tool she might use later. No drama, no defense. Me, don't give him my seat at your table. My voice came out softer than I expected. The plea under the statement surprised me. Fatherhood sneaks emotion into sentences you meant to be simple. Her voice was smaller than before, like a room after the party ends. Daughter, I don't think he ever earned a seat. A slow breath crossed the space between us and took something with it. Pride, maybe, or the habit of being angry first. Then I stood, knees complaining in their familiar way. 62 has a sound. She looked up, the question already there. Daughter, you're not staying for the banquet? Me, I wasn't invited. She absorbed that, looked away, looked back. Daughter, that was before. Me, that was the choice, and I respected it. I said it because it was true, and because I needed her to know I would respect her again, even if the next choice hurt me. Love without leverage, that's the trick. A long silence, the kind you can rest in. Daughter, you're still my father. Me, and you're still my daughter. We let the 2 sentences sit side by side like cups cooling on a table. She nodded. I nodded. The world nodded with us. But I didn't move. Some moments deserve stillness. Some vows require no priest, no paperwork, no witnesses except a lamppost and a parking meter and the dry applause of leaves. That's when he returned. Rick, across the street again, half in shadow where a shop awning bled the light into stripes. He stood like a question mark, watching, waiting to see if the scene would bend back toward him. His hands were in his jacket pockets, but the right shoulder told on him. One fist clenched, one didn't. He expected her to follow. That was his reflex. Not to lead her, but to be leaned toward. She didn't. Instead, she reached into her bag. The zipper rasped softly. She pulled out the envelope, slid a single paper free, folded it once, clean along the crease as if cutting a path through fog. Then she crossed the street slowly, each step measured, no rush, no stumble, and placed it gently into Rick's hand. Not the ticket, the legal declaration of sole sponsorship. My name at the top. The county stamp glinting like a tiny sun caught in late afternoon. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Silence can be a sentence when it arrives with a document. Rick looked down, read the bolded name. His brow furrowed, lines bracketing his eyes that I had never noticed. He'd always seemed younger from a distance, Confidence can be a mask for age until paper unmasks it. Then he looked at her. Rick, you're making a mistake. She shook her head once, hair cutting a dark arc across her cheek. Daughter, no. I made one already. This is the correction. The word correction hung in the air like chalk dust. Not an apology, an edit. And just like that, the stage flipped. Spotlight moved. Center shifted. He didn't know his blocking anymore. She turned, walked back toward me, toward the documents, toward the truth that doesn't need an audience to exist. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't need to. Change rarely gets applause. It gets breath. Rick stayed frozen, paper in his hand, a roll he thought he had, revoked with the precision of a registrar's stamp. I looked at him once, only once, long enough to let him know. Me. The street was your theater. The people became my jury, and they ruled without speaking. I didn't wait for his answer. I didn't need one. Some verdicts are quiet. Some closures happen when a piece of paper meets light and refuses to burn. The wind shifted, just slightly, enough to cool the sweat gathering behind my collar, enough to stir the fabric clinging to my back, enough to lift the edge of the ticket still lying abandoned on the concrete by the lamppost. It fluttered once, hesitant. Twice, braver. Then slid gently beneath the trash can, edges scraping like even the street itself didn't want to carry its weight any longer. Forgotten. She stood beside me now, silent, composed. The kind of composure that comes not from peace, but from exhaustion. A quiet surrender to gravity. We weren't touching. Didn't need to. The distance between us wasn't absence. It was space filled with recognition. Her bag hung heavier on her shoulder, but it wasn't just books and phone chargers anymore. It carried truth now. Legal. Personal. Permanent. Weight disguised as paper. Me. You don't owe him an explanation. Her eyes dropped to the sidewalk. Daughter, I don't think he'd understand it anyway. Her voice was soft, but it held a finality I hadn't heard from her in years. I nodded. A small motion. Enough. Behind us, Rick still hadn't moved. He stood stranded across the street, that document trembling in his hand, the notary stamp catching the last slant of afternoon light. It glowed for a second, almost golden, almost royal. A man holding a crown he couldn't wear. But paper means nothing without power behind it, and mine wasn't loud. It was law. A few minutes passed. Time didn't hurry. It just sat there with us. She checked her phone. The screen lit her face for a heartbeat. 5:42 p.m. banquet doors opened in 18 minutes. Daughter, what happens if I walk in with you instead? Me. They scan your student ID, not the guests. Her lips curved, the first flicker of a smile all evening. Small, but alive. Daughter. Figures. Rick thought it was like a wedding invite. He even asked if we'd get introduced as a pair. I let out something between a laugh and a sigh. Me. You want to make a statement? Her head turned. She met my eyes. Steady now. Daughter, I want to make the right statement. The sun began to dip behind the Berkeley hills, streaks of orange pulling long shadows across the sidewalk. Above the arch at the entrance, the banner shifted again. The word welcome drooped and lifted, slower now, less certain. We walked toward the venue, step by step, no fanfare, no audience, just the two of us. At the double doors, a student worker waited, tablet in hand. She smiled, polite and perfunctory. Staffer. Hi there. Can I scan your card? Lillian handed it over. The beep was small but final. Staffer. And your guest's name? There was a pause. Not hesitation. More like a reset, a recalibration. Daughter. Richard Beckett. My father. The staffer's smile widened a notch. Routine. No drama. Just another line item. Staffer. You're all set. Right this way. The hallway inside smelled of polished floors and catered chicken, faint lemon polish mingling with warm starch. A string quartet was warming up somewhere deeper in the building, bowstrings tugging half-formed notes that echoed against marble tile. I had never seen the inside of that building. She'd never asked me to, never wanted me to. Now we walked in side by side. At the ballroom door, she stopped. "Daughter, you okay?" Me. "Are you?" Her silence was an answer of its own. Then she reached into her bag, rummaging past pens and lip balm until she pulled something out. She handed it to me without ceremony. It was the crushed banquet ticket. The one Rick had thrown, the one I thought lost beneath metal and dirt. She must have scooped it up while I wasn't watching. Me. "You sure you want to keep this?" She shook her head slowly. "Daughter, I want you to keep it. As a reminder." Me. "Of what?" Her eyes locked on mine. No flinching. No mask. "Daughter, that symbols only matter when they're backed by substance." The truth in her voice steadied me more than any stamp or signature ever could. I folded the ticket with care, slid it into the side pocket of my jacket, where it could ride quietly, pressed against me. Me. "Then I'll carry it, not as a wound, as a witness." We entered the ballroom. Round tables spread across the floor, white cloths spilling to polished wood. Dimmed lights softened the corners. Glasses clinked like polite applause. A saxophone line from the jazz quartet threaded through the hum of conversation. Parents and daughters sat in small constellations. Some posed for photos near the school crest, the flash of cameras punctuating the air. Others compared corsages, scholarships, resume, tallying futures the way kids tally baseball cards. We moved quietly through the space. No spotlight, no announcement, just chairs waiting. The MC tapped his mic. Static crackled, then his voice rose, confident, rehearsed. A welcome speech unspooled, sentences polished for donors and pride. Laughter rippled in places it was meant to. But I barely heard any of it. What I heard was the soft click of a pen. Her pen, signing the guest book near the door. The sound was small but exact, like a lock turning. I leaned closer when she stepped aside, saw what she'd written. Lillian Ann Beckett, attending with my father, the man who never stopped showing up. My breath caught, not in my throat, not in my chest, in my spine. It lifted me straighter, drew my shoulders back, made 62 feel lighter for the first time in years. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't arrive as apology. Sometimes it arrives as acknowledgement. We sat. Plates clinked. The waiter ladled chicken breast and potatoes with absent care. The meat was dry, the potatoes lukewarm. I didn't mind, not tonight. The moment was hot enough. She leaned toward me once, voice pitched for me alone. "Daughter, I think I knew what you were doing, even before I read the papers." Me. "How?" Her lips curved again. "Daughter, you never rushed to stop me." "That's not you. You waited until I was caught in my own line." I exhaled. Me. "And?" Her voice dropped even lower. "Daughter, it wasn't surrender I was after. It was freedom from the strings pulling me the wrong way." A quote I'll remember forever. A line truer than any verdict. After dinner, faces turned toward us. Parents, faculty, a few of her classmates. One leaned close, smiling with that kind of curiosity that seeks confirmation. Girl. "So this is the real dad?" Lillian nodded without pause. Girl. "Good to finally meet you." We've heard stories. Her cheeks colored faintly, the flush of being known. Me. "All true, I'm afraid." The girl laughed. My daughter laughed too. And for once it wasn't the brittle kind, not the rehearsed chuckle she'd used to patch silence with Rick. This laugh was round, whole. It sounded like her again. Later, in the quietest voice of the night, she leaned close. "Daughter, he doesn't know how much he lost out there." I turned, met her eyes. Me. "He will. The silence will teach him." She nodded once, a verdict accepted. The banquet ended with a final toast. Glasses rose. The room stood. Applause swelled like surf. I raised my glass but didn't drink. I didn't need to. She touched hers to mine, crystal chiming soft as breath, then whispered, "Daughter, thank you for letting the truth speak louder than pride." Outside, the air had cooled. Even the city felt different, like Berkeley itself had exhaled with us. Streetlights flickered on in rhythmic rows, one after another, casting cones of pale amber across the sidewalks. Their hum filled the spaces between footsteps, a mechanical lullaby above the evening quiet. She walked close to me now, not clinging, not reaching, just present, the kind of presence that doesn't need proof. We passed the spot where Rick had once stood. Empty now, the lamppost leaned in still silence. The trash can sat squat and ordinary. The curb where the ticket had fluttered looked like every other curb in the city. All of it had slipped back into background. Furniture of a street, nothing more. No audience left, no stage. Just a street, a silence, a knowing. She turned her face to the breeze and smiled, faint but sure. "Daughter, it feels different, doesn't it?" Me. "Because it is." We walked a few more paces, the sound of our shoes sinking like we'd rehearsed it. Then I stopped, reached into my pocket, pulled out the crumpled banquet ticket. I held it in my hand, felt its fragile weight. Not even cardstock, just a flimsy digital print on cheap paper, folded twice, one edge bent and soft, like it had already given up. It was everything he'd tried to stake a claim with, a crown made of tissue. And now, me. You know, this was never the issue. Her eyes fell on it. "Daughter." "But it was the spark." I nodded, thumb smoothing one of the creases. Me. "Sometimes you need the wrong invitation to realize who's supposed to be there." She reached out, took it from me, tore it in half without ceremony. The sound was crisp, quick, absolute. No drama, just closure. She walked a few steps to the corner, dropped the halves into the recycling bin near the intersection. No applause, no gasps. And still, it felt like a verdict. Rick didn't call, didn't text. Not that night. Not the next week. He disappeared as quickly as he'd tried to insert himself. Vapor in reverse. My daughter later told me her mother mentioned he'd moved back to Santa Barbara. Said he needed space. Space from what? No one knew. But silence makes a hell of a mirror, and his reflection was failure. 3 weeks later, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. The kind you fold once and slip into an envelope because the words deserve paper. It was on lined notebook paper, smudged slightly at the edges, ink pressed deep where the pen had paused. It read, "Dad, I finally understand what you meant about truth being quiet. It doesn't shout, it just stands. And when it's time, it lets the noise collapse around it. Thank you for being the still point in my storm. I'm sorry it took me this long to see how loud the wrong voices had gotten. This time, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just offering gratitude. Love, Lillian. I didn't cry, but I read it 3 times. Once fast, once slow, once aloud, so the air could hold the words with me. The next fall, I attended her graduation, sat in the front row, ticket in my pocket with my name printed clean. My name in the program, too. My name etched on the donor plaque near the library entrance, a plaque she'd asked them to place in recognition. She asked me to stand when they called her name, and I did. She walked across the stage in heels too high and a cap too big, tassel bouncing like a metronome to her steps. But her smile didn't wobble once, not once. Later, at dinner, she lifted her glass, eyes steady. "Daughter, you didn't fight for a seat at the table. You built the table." She turned toward me, holding the words like they were heavier than glass. "Daughter, to the man who made room for me, even when I tried to fill his chair with someone else." The toast rang small, just for us. It was bittersweet, yes, but mostly, it was whole. That's the thing about revenge. It doesn't always need to sting. Sometimes it just needs to stand. Silent, steady, unshakable. And when the crowd clears, when the ticket's torn, when the truth echoes louder than the applause ever could, that's when you know you won. Without yelling, without striking, just by being undeniable. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.